G'day, folks. Chris McLean back with yet another episode of the show. And in the studio today, I've got Akshat from BizAmps. They're a B2B marketing agency helping SaaS companies generate leads via email, cold calling, and LinkedIn outreach. A bunch of direct outreach stuff going on there. Akshat, thanks so much for dropping by.
Thank you for having me.
So it looks like a lot of the stuff that you do is what we would call like direct outreach. So you're sort of going more of a less sort of traditional, I guess, attraction marketing, sort of paid ads type stuff. You're going cold email, you're going direct messaging. What? Obviously, that's something that works. Why is particularly that sort of direct outreach a channel or a direction that you've decided to take the agency in?
Because I think we started back as a Facebook advertising agency, but when we saw that we wanted to move into B2B, because B2B is a space that I personally could understand because I was selling to clients. So it was my own itch that I was scratching. I realized you cannot advertise on Facebook because the targeting for B2B is horrible. LinkedIn is super expensive.
Yeah.
Right. So that just left us with the three options that we have.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's good. It's interesting. This sort of, like you said, you're solving your own problem. I love a solution that sort of comes out of necessity and sort of trying to fix your own thing. Actually, now that I'm doing that, I'm actually really good at it. I'm really interested in this space because this can be a place that people go really, really wrong. Right, cold, particularly cold messaging on LinkedIn. It's very different from that more gentle kind of warm approach that you might have on Facebook, where if it's relevant to me, I might engage with it. Where it's like, hey, I'm dropping into your DMs, I'm dropping into your messaging, I'm connecting with you. It's a bit more of a brute force approach. How do you do that correctly? Like, how do you get that engagement? Because I think a lot of people can just drop in and drop their pitch, right? Hey, Akshat, nice to meet you. Here's all the stuff that I can do for you. Do you want to book a call? That sort of doesn't work that much. That doesn't work very well, particularly on LinkedIn. People are pretty, like, their bullshit radars are pretty solid these days, and they'll either just disconnect you or sort of ignore you. How do you get through that? How do you what's that approach to get open rates, particularly on cold email, direct? How do you formulate that sort of contact sequence?
So basically, what happened was pretty much after the lockdowns, pitch slapping stopped working because every salesperson became a lead generation agency because he could not knock on doors right now. So he could just came basically on LinkedIn and started manually, reaching out because that's every salesperson's job. So we had immediately a lot of competition. And pitch slapping is the most easiest way to start. So everyone started doing it, and well, the method got burnt. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So what we did was we used two approaches. One is a conversation approach. The idea with the conversation approach is very simple. It's just to ask the person what you are doing, what we are doing, and just in that conversation, tell them that, okay, you are working on this. We have actually worked on this as well. So that entices uh, a conversation on the phone. So that is one thing that works. And the second thing that we have seen work is just ask them if they want to see some piece of content. Yes or no, a very basic, simple question. And the idea with that piece of content is, are you aware of the jobs to be done framework?
Which framework?
So jobs to be done framework is a very interesting framework. What they realized was, why does a person goes to McDonald's to buy a milkshake in the morning at 7 a.m.? So they realized that they were trying to improve the milkshake. So they first tried to put it like it's a healthy milkshake, stuff like that. And they were like, the sales did not work. So they started asking people, why are you buying that milkshake? The people are like, I have a very long drive ahead of me. I need something to engage me. So so the thing that mattered was not the healthiness of the shake, but the thickness of it, so that keeps the person engaged. So the job to be done of a milkshake was to make the person not sleep.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the actual job of the
Yeah.
music.
Well,
And this is done by a Harvard professor. So basically,
mm,
based on the same line, we have to understand what our audience is job he or she is trying to do, and make a piece of content. Once we have made that, then we go out and say, do you want this piece of content? And yeah, the moment they say yes, you start nurturing them, and then you start closing them on the phone.
So I guess like that's going to come really back to really understanding who I'm actually targeting, and not just particularly like LinkedIn, right? It seems the stuff that I generally see working and that I hear working is less about bulk spamming everybody with a business, and rather than messaging 1,000 people, I want to find 100 people in my specific niche who I know I can help. So that's real estate agents or butchers or florists or something like that, like a very niche person. And now now I know what their milkshake is, right? I know why they're buying the milkshake because I know their drivers, I know their behaviors, I know what their desires and pain points are, and then I can start creating content specifically around that thing, rather than messaging 1,000 people with something that's not as relevant, because it's kind of 5 marketing tactics rather than 5 marketing tactics for florists on Google that are working this week, right? Something more specific. Is that really important to, as that first piece, to really understand who you're speaking to before you start engaging and creating that content?
Yes, I think it also works the opposite way. The moment you start, the moment you start narrowing your targeting, you automatically have to start getting creative with the messaging you go. So if you basically think of account based marketing is nothing but extremely narrow targeting. If you extremely narrowly target just one person, if you're dating a girl, you will be just customize all your personalization to one. It's just extremely narrow targeting. So it's like mass two going one to one.
So it's somewhere in between, right? Not one person, but maybe instead of 10,000, you've got 1,000 people that you can start to talk to. But at least it's relatively niche, so that my content's speaking to that person. Because then I can have, like you said, then I can have that kind of lead-in conversation, because I kind of know that at some point they're going to need my thing because I've dealt with that person before, and maybe it becomes easier to qualify then as well, right? Because so again, I know that person. If the thing that I'm offering them doesn't fit, then I know automatically, okay, they're not a client for me, and I can move on, rather than just ending up chatting with somebody. So I think that's the other thing that can happen as well with a lot of this sort of organic conversation, lead generation techniques, is you end up just having random unpointed conversations with people, and you just kind of waste time just talking to people rather than steering it towards some sort of a business outcome. And you sort of talked about that, give them some content and then they activate into the funnel and you can close. I like what you said, because I found that true as well, that rather than saying like, hey, here's all the stuff I do and here's the link to the thing and here's the video, go click on it and check it out, I found it works a lot when you ask, hey, I've got a link to this free training that people like you find interesting. Would you be interested in receiving it? Then you kind of get that micro commitment, right? Of no, that's not for me. Great. Or yes, I'd love to see it. And then you can send the link and they're more likely to go and look at it. So it's sort of that permission based, right? You mentioned that, but is that a sort of a technique or a tactic that you find works well, is to actually get permission first rather than just kind of
it particularly depends. So it depends on the target market. If your target market is very big, we ask for permission, right? But if our target market is very small, and if we are not getting responses, then we would directly send out the links. Why? Because we are hoping if someone does not reply to us but clicks on the link, we can drop a pixel on them and retarget them. Right. So it also depends on the size of the market is very big determiner of what the strategy will be.
Yeah, it's interesting because I guess you do get kind of people that are, I'm trying to think of the right term, is sort of not ghosting, but they're kind of, they may not respond to messaging, but they click through and they go through all of your stuff without you being aware of it. So that's, again, that might come down to a bit of really understanding how your market operates. And that's interesting. So do you find that happens, that tends to happen in smaller audiences where they're
Yes.
less likely to maybe respond, but they'll click through and you can pixel them and then they sort of enter the funnel?
Yes, I've seen this, and I have a theory. I think I might be wrong, but I think people are introverted and extroverted on the internet as well, right? So you have to take consideration of both the behaviors.
Yeah, I find that that's very, very interesting. I think you're absolutely right. We're still the same. We tend to be the same as we are in real life on the internet. Sometimes it's we're more extroverted than we are in reality. But yeah, introverted people might not respond, but they might quietly go through the back end, watch all of your training, and become clients. So that's really interesting. How do you determine that? How do you is that purely testing? Is that sending 100 people and you send the link directly, and then you split test that against 100 where you ask permission and you kind of see what works for you? Is that how you're approaching it? Like literally just testing what works for your audience?
Testing is the sending the link directly is a last approach, because that shows that then that's just clearly spamming. Right. So we try to position ourselves a little, like, and especially if the person replies yes and we reply back to the same message, the person might forget after replying to us, but he can see his own conversation. So that message is the last approach when our sequence or the cadence has finished.
Right. So it's less about testing it and more that's your Hail Mary at the end of your sequence.
Yeah.
If you haven't responded, hey, I'm just gonna check this thing out. I promise this is the last message I'm going to send you. I get it. Okay, so it's more about that sort of the final part, and I guess at that point, if they haven't clicked through, if they haven't engaged, you're going to burn them one way or another. You might as well give it a shot and sort of throw a link in there and see what happens.
So what we have started also seeing is people have started removing the connection as well. Right. And the reason people get connected is because they see the person's profile, they accept the connection request based on that, right? And so now if you pitch them, they will remove you.
Yeah. Kind of sort of said earlier that people's bullshit radar is pretty on point, particularly in LinkedIn now. And particularly since COVID, like the last couple of years, a lot more people have moved on to LinkedIn and that kind of direct approach, as you were saying. So I think people are very, very wary of new connections on LinkedIn. So this is why I find this whole thing quite interesting, because LinkedIn is super, super powerful. I mean, the engagement on LinkedIn, just in organic post engagement, is massive compared to Facebook. You still get a lot more engagement and interaction and that kind of stuff in LinkedIn at the moment. But particularly with B2B audiences, LinkedIn is super, super powerful, as saying compared to Facebook. So getting this sequencing and getting this kind of cold messaging aspect right, I think can be massive, particularly for people like us in agencies where we're trying to get in front of B2B audiences that are time poor, that are very wary of connecting to people that are going to spam them. So it's kind of this, you're trying to running this gamut every time you're trying to connect with people without trying to burn people, right? So that's what I find it very, very interesting. Shift gears a bit. Do you find that does a similar approach work with cold email, and are all cold kind of similar, or are there distinctions in cold email in the inbox versus sort of your LinkedIn inbox, if you like?
See, the cold email usually does not have the profile attached to it. One thing with the LinkedIn is the context is there with the profile. Who is sending the message? You can judge a lot by a person's photos itself.
Yeah,
There's
that makes
subconscious
sense.
behavior. But on email, it's just you don't trust anyone. You don't trust a new sender at all. On email, what works is just keep it very short and direct the person to a link. Don't ask for a reply, because they don't know who they're replying to. You just a name on the screen. On LinkedIn, it does
Yeah.
not feel that way. On LinkedIn, it feels like, okay, this is the person again. This is the school they went to and stuff like that. So email, and we don't get replies from email very much.
Right.
It's like 1/10 that we get from LinkedIn. But on email, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get them to click on a link. So if it's a product company, then we ask them to click on a link and see the video of the product to get the aha moment, because products and services are sold differently. So we're trying to get to click on the link, see what the aha moment is, ideally in a jobs to be done blog post, right? So they can see
Yeah.
this is the job I'm trying to do. This is how the product fits in. In a service company, it's pretty much the same, the job to be done, but how we solved the problems or a case study. So once they click on the link, now you have started to build trust. You can, LinkedIn call, whatever it takes.
Yeah. Yeah, but you're seeing drastically lower connection rates and click-through rates and that sort of thing on email, view rates compared to, or open rates, I guess, compared to LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So if email is sort of 10%, what do you find on LinkedIn? I with my LinkedIn, I'd find probably about 30, like mid 30s to 40% sort of engagement rate on LinkedIn, open rate, which is pretty solid, I think. What do you have a stat around sort of open rates or connection rates on LinkedIn?
So connection rates are around 25%. That what we have experienced on LinkedIn, and the profile matters a lot. The profiles. So we do two approaches. We have our customers profile, by which we reach out. We have our own profiles. So our customers profile, because they are in the industry, they get a much higher acceptance rate. Or if it's a female profile profiles also do tend to get a lot more acceptance rates. So
that makes sense. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I like where you said that idea of context. That makes a massive difference on a social profile versus email, where it's a nameless, faceless email address versus I can actually look into the person and make a better decision or a more informed decision. So I can look at their name and what they're doing and their role and who they are and some of their content. So it makes a big difference. So that makes sense that there's 25% versus 10% on email. Makes a lot. Yeah, that idea of context, I like that. I like that you brought up that idea. I think that's very cool. And particularly, you talk about SaaS and products, which is again a distinct part of B2B. Right, B2B could be anything, real estate agents or sports stores or e-commerce, right? But SaaS is very distinct. So you talk about sort of product videos and that sort of thing. How are you specifically? Is there a specific style of video or a specific piece of content? You sort of talked about blog pieces and articles. Is that where you're tending to send people, or are you sending them to demo videos for SaaS products? Is there how does that sort of operate? Where are you sending people from that connection?
If possible, we'll try to send them to a blog post that has animated GIFs on it. Right?
Okay.
People will not see the video, but GIF is a automatic thing. See, people do not care about product or service; they just care about their problems and their opportunities. Right? So our whole goal is the blog post addresses that thing. This is your problem. This is how this can be solved. Right? The product just happened to be a piece of the puzzle. Or the service just happens to be a piece of the puzzle. Because once the person is sold on the idea that the product or the service can solve my problem, then the sale is very easy. Because he will select the vendor after he selects the solution that will solve his problem. So he will first select, okay, I want to go outbound, then he's going to come to BizAmps. In most cases, you first have to sell them the outbound works for you, then BizAmps is just a vendor that provides it.
Yeah. So you're choosing almost, I've heard this described as you're choosing a category first almost. Like the first decision is a category. I want a category of marketing agencies, or I want a category of software products, whether it's I'm looking for project management software, or I'm looking for something that solves. It's kind of I'm looking for a car or a motor vehicle or a luxury car. I buy that category, and then within that category, I choose a brand. Like you said for yourself, I choose outbound marketing as a category. I decide that's what I want, and then within that, I choose a brand. I choose BizAmps within that category of things that I've already kind of chosen that's the thing that I'm looking for. Whether that's outbound marketing, luxury car, luxury real estate, whatever that is. Yeah. So again, that makes a lot of sense. That idea of sending people to something that whole what's in it for me, how does this solve my problem, what's the opportunity for me now that I'm at that level of, okay, I'm sold on outbound, now I've got to pick who the vendor is. It's going to come down to who do I believe can solve my problem better, faster, with more ease, with less input from me, that kind of stuff. So is that sort of what you're talking to in those blog pieces?
Exactly. And I think you would also be doing pretty much the same thing. Like, we're recording this on StreamYard. You first decided, okay, I can't do it on Zoom because of the video quality. Then you start looking for the alternatives. So solution comes first, the vendor comes second.
Yeah, 100%. That's it. It's important, I guess, as marketers, to understand that process as well, right? Because then you can position content for the different parts of that journey, helping somebody make that category choice first, or that service or problem solution piece first, get clear on that. And then I move into, right, what's the pain? What's in it for me? How does this solve? How fast is it? Does it really, how quickly does it solve my problem? How deeply does it solve my problem? All that kind of more granular stuff. And understanding that journey, you can then position yourself and position content and ads to kind of manage that process and help somebody move through that process. Is that essentially what you're doing and how you're helping companies?
Yes. See, the idea is, I think one mistake I made very early on is I realized marketing is just marketing. But I think marketing is a little bit more business strategy. So now when we take on clients, we very clear. We're like, marketing cannot solve all your problems, right? So we will work on business strategy as well. Because if you're selling something if you are a low cost provider, because in India, what happens is now the labor cost is increasing, but the labor cost was so low, people were just pitching based on the price.
Yeah.
The problem with that is the moment inflation hits, now you have to raise your prices, right? So if you have learned only to sell by price, you don't know any other way to sell. It's the same thing that happened with Walmart, I think. Right?
Yeah.
So they need to charge more so that they can hire better talent. Otherwise, it's the opposite. If they charge less, they will hire worse talent. They will
create worse products, worse delivery, worse fulfillment. Worse
and
customer experience.
There is this company. There's this guy. I don't know if I pronounce him right. It's the Future or the Future. He has this design. Yeah. What he says is he's a design guy. But he says, I'm a strategy guy. Because first of all, on design you will not get paid that much, and the job to be done is actually a business development job all the time for all marketing. So you always are pitching business development. Again, you're solving business development. Part of business development is outbound. Part of outbound is BizAmps. So the higher up you go, the better you can charge, the more flexibility you have. Otherwise, it's very difficult to sell an offer that is just not good. People know, like you said, this, like, bullshit radars are very high up. If someone comes to you and sells you another email software, you're like, dude, which year are you living in? So the offer needs to be, an offer is a part of the strategy of the business. So marketers needs to understand the product, the pain, everything, and work with the business strategy with the client.
Yeah, I love that, mate. There's a very, very, very succinct way to put that idea of once you, as we sort of talked earlier, you've got that entire funnel, that user journey from, or that decision journey almost, right? The further down, or the higher up, or further down towards the front of that journey, you can position yourself. You said, like, I've got business problems and business strategy here, and then I've got a piece of software here that fixes it. If I can be positioned more here and compete here, that's much easier for me to dominate than competing here on price and features and benefits and that kind of thing. If I'm selling a business strategic service here and I fix it with this, that's much, I can charge more, I can create better offers, I can target bigger clients than if I'm, like I said, competing on as a commodity down at this end, even though I might be selling a commodity, the commodity fixes that problem. It's all about positioning, right? So the further down that journey you can position, that makes
And
a lot
the
more
idea
sense.
is that if you come to the level of commodity, you're selling by price, basically, feature and price. That's, you're selling on that. The problem with that is you will always tend to charge less. And if you have less money, you will not be able to create a better product, create a better experience. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you basically want to charge more with help of marketing. That's how I position it.
Yeah. Love it, mate. Lovely point. Great place to end on. Heaps of really good insights for anybody that's looking at that outbound side of things, whether for their own businesses. I think for us as agencies, we tend to do a lot of outbound, paid ads. If you're an SEO agency, paid ads can be pretty tricky and costly. If you can get outbound dialed in really well, it can be really effective. So I think a lot of tips and a lot of ideas and techniques you've talked about today can be beneficial for our clients if we're doing outbound, but even for ourselves as agencies. I think there's a lot of takeaways we can take from that. So really appreciate you dropping by and sharing all of that knowledge. Where's some of the best places, or the best place for people to reach out and find out more, have a discussion with you, learn more about outbound, learn more about BizAmps and what you do?
So we are, if you just search my name or BizAmps on YouTube, you will get everything you want to know and how we think, right? So.
Okay, awesome. And I'll try and grab those YouTube channel links, and I'll link those up in the show notes along with your URLs and your best contacts. Really appreciate you dropping by, Akshat. Really interesting stuff. I said it's a fascinating part of marketing. A lot of agencies focus on inbound. So the outbound's a quite distinct beast. So it's interesting to get some insights into that. So appreciate you dropping by and sharing your knowledge in that space with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure, mate. Thank you for being here. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope you got as much out of the episode as I did. Super cool stuff. We'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.